"2024, this was definitely a year. While I'm not gonna go into the specifics of what happened during this year, I would say for me personally, this was the year of me trying out new things. I moved into a brand new place all on my own. I'm tutoring an age demographic I never thought I would do, teenagers. And I went to my first ever con, which was nice. Throughout this year, I consumed different types of media that I have a few opinions on, and I wanted to share it with you guys. So this video will be a bit different from what I normally do for my returning viewers. And for those who are new and randomly click on this video, first of all, hello! Second of all, the name's MaxAC. I'm a Wolf Girl YouTuber who reviews underrated and obscured manga. So if that sounds interesting, I have a list of videos that will appear in the top right corner right now for you to watch. And if you like those videos, subscribe so you don't miss out on my next one. Back to what I was saying, I came up with a list of the games, shows, and movies that I experienced this year. If you don't want to watch the entire video and just want to hear my thoughts on certain things, I put timestamps in the description below of everything that I will cover in this video. So with that out of the way, please enjoy the things that I played/watched in 2024, starting with... Okay, so for these games, I'm putting them under one category since they were made by the same company, but Atlus had a lot of games they produced this year, starting with one of the big ones, Persona 3 Reload, a remake of the original P3 that came out in 2002. And I would say, yeah, I liked it. I enjoyed it. I mean, I had to if I was willing to plat it the whole thing before the DLC came out. I know there are a few Persona fans who played the original were disappointed by this remake, especially when they made changes to the atmosphere in the game and especially the gameplay. And I can see that. Borrowing elements from Persona 5 is a bit of a pro and con. I mean, on one side, it does make gameplay a lot more fun, but at the same time, it can be pretty easy. Especially during late game when some of the party members are beyond broken. I mean, Ken can do what now? But if you enjoyed the game and thought it was a masterpiece and left you bawling your eyes out, I would say I'm happy for you. There are still other things to enjoy, like the added dialogue in the social events, the dorm activities with all the C's members, all the new voice actors giving great performances to the characters, especially characters like Akihiko, Misuru, Junpei, and Aigis. The fact that they added social events to all the male C's members, I know it's not much, but it is still something. And as always, the OST is still a bop. With all this talk about the remake of the original, it made me curious to see what the original was like. So that's what I did. Kind of. I actually played Persona 3 Portable, and I could see why those P3P fans were not happy that the female route was in Reload, because the female route in P3P is actually pretty fun. Yeah, it did take me a while to grind a lot to level up, but once I get past through that, it's actually pretty fun. And beyond the Tartarus grind, I got a chance to hang out with the C's boys members, and it has one of my favorite Velvet Room attendees ever. Like, Theodore, you are always my beloved. And as of the time of me recording this, I'm actually about to make a very, very important decision in the game. And hopefully by the time that this video comes out, I'll finish Persona 3 Portable. I do have Persona 3 Fez emulated on my laptop, but I'm not touching that for a while because I'm Persona 3 burnout. So yeah, that's all I gotta say for all the Persona 3 games. I am not gonna touch the DLC for a while, mostly because I need to be in a pretty good mood to shelve out $35 onto this. So moving on to the last major Atlus game that I played this year, Persona 5 Tactica. I know technically this came out last year, but I only recently started to play it this year. I played a lot of tactical games when I was younger, so having a P5 one is right up my alley. It incorporates a lot of elements from Persona 5 like the ala attack, guns, and baton passes, and getting everything fall into place while I deal out a major all-out attack is pretty satisfying. and by the time that I'm recording this, I actually technically beat the game and just doing New Game Plus. And I didn't get a chance to play out the DLC, but we'll see what happens with that one. I heard that it has different gameplay from the original main game. And before I move on, while I didn't get a chance to play these two games in full, I did get a chance to play their demos, that being Shin Megami Tensei 5 Vengeance and Metaphor. For Vengeance, I don't really have that much to say, considering that their games are always philosophical and such, and gameplay wise is what I expected from Atlus. And speaking from what I expected from Atlus, Metaphor is their new IP that people originally brushed off because they see it as Persona with a fantasy coat of paint on it, to which I say they're not wrong. But yet at the same time, what you expect? It's directed by the same guy who directed the last previous Persona games. Although gameplay wise, they did manage to mix it up a bit by incorporating all the good elements from the past Persona games and including a class system from other RPGs like Dragon Quest and Final Fantasy. As for story wise, it is pretty intriguing. I want to see what will happen next. And I do like that the protagonist is doing the one thing that every Persona protagonist wish they could do in game.
So, what brings you to enlist?
I want to fight for real change.
Space! Seriously, it was such a jump scare having the main character voice the lines after I chose the dialogue option. I was not prepared for that. Moving on from one set of games made by a company to another set of games made by a company. Hoyoverse! Yeah, I know. Hoyoverse had a difficult year, to put it lightly, when it comes to real life stuff. Between the boycott, despite having good intentions in Genshin, the PR disaster involving an alleged voice actor in Star Rail, characters not having their lines voiced because of a strike that happened this year and it's still somewhat going. I don't know about that part. Firing and replacing new actors with no discernible reason other than, I don't know, and probably some more other news that I don't know and probably someone in the comments will tell me. But when it comes to games, I would say Hoyoverse did a pretty great job. For Genshin, it's still pretty much about the same. I know they did make some optimizations, but that's equivalent to wishing on a monkey's paw, as that has its own set of drawbacks. As for the new region, Natlan, it's actually pretty fun to traverse around, and it's also pretty cool that each character from each region has its own specialty. Story-wise, it is pretty much about the same. Although I will give Natlan this, it is the nation of war, because while in the first half they don't show you too much, in the second patch they showed you just how far war can get in this nation. By letting you choose which group you want to save, the consequences that come from that, and even this great moment where you ride the balloon and you just see corpses everywhere. So much that Paimon started to freak out. So it will be interesting to see how they'll wrap up this story next year. And as for the twin story, well, they did had a moment to change the status quo and give us something worthwhile, only to backpedal on that and say it was a dream and that Traveler doesn't remember it, making a lot of players, including me, pretty frustrated, to put it lightly.
Didn't get to ask all the questions. He used literally just one question, and then he forgets all of that entire conversation afterwards. Wowza. But at least we got it in our memories, right? I have it in my memory, all up here. I'm the true witness, sir. What are my thoughts on today's quest? I'm going back to Star Rail.
And on the subject of Star Rail, I would say Star Rail had the most success this year, mostly coming from its 2.0 patch, and with that, the Petacony quest. One of the best storylines to have come out of this year, mostly because the devs were poker faced when they said that this was going to be a fun time. Well, they weren't completely wrong. It was fun, at least gameplay wise, but story wise there was so much happening. From the expansive lore to new characters that were introduced and quickly became fan favorites, some of which were garnered memes, including this infamous one where we can't think about the word huge again without thinking about this clip.
Doctor, you're we can't have that on the Christian server. This is the one! This is the one! This is it! We got it!
to even having a great morally great antagonist and having one of my best weekly boss fights, mostly because I could say with a straight face that I killed a godlike entity with a train.
Witness the will of the weak.
Even after when the main Panaconi quest wrapped up, there was still so much to do. Like on the LeFou, which had its war dance and expanded more of its lore and continued the story where we last left off, including resurrecting a character who was long since dead. And even on Panaconi, where we get introduced to the Galaxy Rangers and their goal to hunt down Dr. Primitive. So there's still a lot going on, although some people are curious about what the next major planet is going to be like. Considering how amazing the Panaconi quest was, they were wondering if the devs can live up to the hype. And it seems like they did, because in the latest 2.7 live stream, not only is it an interlude to the next major planet, but they also gave us a teaser of what it'll look like. And boy, from how things are looking, we are hooked. And I'm not even talking about the gameplay, where it seems like they're trying to make things even more broken, but also just the characters, which every Honkai Impact 3rd players are practically foaming at the mouth when they saw this. And to wrap up this Hoyoverse trilogy, we have the newest and latest game from them, Zenless Zone Zero, or ZZZ for short. And while Star Rail had the biggest success this year to the point where there's a reason why the Genshin should never memes continue to live on to this day, I would say I would give the most improvement award to this game right here, because as someone who played the game when it first came out in July to where it is now, it is like night and day. And it makes sense because the devs take the players' feedback very personally and optimize it to make the game both fun and easy for both the returning and the new players. Like seriously, in the 1.4 live stream overview, there is so much optimization, but it is extremely important if you want to make sure your players keep playing your game. As for the combat, I would say it's like Honkai Impact 3rd with a Devil May Cry sprinkling in, mostly because of the parries and blocking. You can switch up your teammates once you stun an enemy long enough to deliver some powerful combos. And speaking of characters, there are 6 factions that the story introduced so far, that being the Cutting Hairs, the Bellbog family, the Best Faction, the Sons of Caledon, the Police Academy, and then Section 6. And that's without me mentioning the other great stuff that this game has, that being the smooth animation, the fan service, and god tier like music. And while the story is a bit of a slow burn, it does a great job at building the characters and their relationships. So when some major shit goes down, we actually care what happens to them. And from the looks of the 1.4 trailer, seems that major shit is about to go down. So yeah, for those who haven't played it, if the combat is interesting to you, I would highly recommend ZZZ. Especially after 1.4 drops, because it seems to optimize it for new players. Plus, you get a free S-Rank agent right off the bat. Who doesn't love that? Before I move on to the next part of the video, I do have one honorable mention, and that's Sandland. I did a manga review earlier this year in memory of the late great Akira Toriyama, although I will admit I did accidentally pronounce some names wrong. But the game itself is pretty chill. Like, I'm not one of those customizable vehicles type of person, but I am a huge fan of open world RPGs, which this is. And I honestly was just chilling around, doing quests, upgrading my tank one at a time, building my village. Honestly, yeah, this gameplay that you're seeing right now is mostly just me messing around. I mean, story-wise, I did finish the main quest, and I'm heading into the new story that Akira Toriyama wrote before his passing, which I will eventually finish. Except now I'm just gonna take my time, and considering that I have a lot to do on this map, yeah, I'm gonna be here for a while. So yeah, that's all the games that I played. Honestly, when I think about it, it is a lot less shorter than what the next section is going to be, and it makes sense because I have a somewhat busy schedule and these games need to take a good chunk of my time. But yeah, on to the next section. The first thing that I saw this year was the TED show. I actually watched the TED movies way back when I was a teenager. So seeing the TED show up in this current day and age was surprising, to say the least. but it was a good surprise. My current opinions on Seth MacFarlane and his shows are pretty neutral, but I can say with confidence that when he puts his effort in comedy, he really puts his effort in, because this show is pretty funny. I love the dynamic between Ted and the teenage version of Johnny. I would say the funniest episodes for me were the first episode where they get high for the first time and they first discovered pot. The Halloween episode where Ted spends time with this new character, that being the cousin, and they actually have a pretty funny dynamic as well. And I was not expecting the teacher to wear that suit. I mean, I expected him to try to have sex with Ted, but I did not expect the suit. And I would say one of the last ones would be when they were trying to get a porn tape and the mom accidentally found it and the cousin took the heat for them, but she thought that the husband was playing the sex tape, and it just, oh my god. Oh, I'm just thinking about it right now. And I'm excited for what season 2 will bring to the table. Moon Girl. I actually watched this show when it came out last year, and it was a good bonding experience with me and my sisters. I mean, what's not like to love? A great art style, a good leading character, fluid animation, and overall just a great fun show with an overarching story. Like seriously, how did people miss this? I mean, season 1 literally ended with a cliffhanger, and season 2 immediately picking it back up by doing the one thing that all writers will do with their characters: adding trauma. Which, yeah, they did to poor Lunella by basically giving her what Iron Man had back in Age of Ultron. But beyond that, season 2 expands more on the supporting cast, introducing new characters, some of which I'll admit didn't leave the biggest impact on me, but managed to pull off a big climactic mid-season finale. And managing the whole family figuring out the superhero's identity part with both sincere and hilariousness. But even with all that, I feel like it's too good to be true. I mean, last year, yeah, Moon Girl did get some recognition by some YouTubers, but for the promotion of season 2, all Disney did was just release one trailer and this poster, so I feel like not many people are gonna know about this, and it's only a matter of time before it gets canceled. Of fucking course. Well, it was a good run while it still lasted, because I'm calling it now, Disney is definitely going to be pulling this show in 2 years or so, just like how HBO's removing shows right now. So let's enjoy this while it still lasts. If you haven't seen Moon Girl and the Devil Dinosaur, go watch it while you still can. And as for those who don't have Disney Plus, sail the seas, everyone. Okay, so for this next batch of TV shows, I don't really have that much to say about them, although I still want to include them. So first of all, we have Smiling Friends. Smiling Friends Season 2 is literally just more of the same, although they do try to change up the dynamics a bit and put spotlight onto the more secondary characters. Blue Eye Samurai and Arcane Season 2 are two shows that I feel like I can't add anything significant with it, although I will say this, I am intrigued as to what Misu's gonna do in London, and it would be interesting to see a samurai in what type of time period are they in again? Oh yeah, that type of time period in London. As for Arcane Season 2, I mean, it was good. I mean, I still have problems with the pacing, and honestly, Netflix should really fix their 9-episode count. It is absolutely killing me. But yeah, that's all I gotta say about this. Windbreaker is a series that I covered earlier this year, so you want to see the video, it's in the top right corner. And the anime does a great job at adapting the source material. But the story is basically about this delinquent named Sakura finding his way up to the top and becoming the strongest in the school. And along the way, he meets some friends. It has a great dub, some great action, and overall it's pretty great. Umbrella Academy Season 4. Oh boy. I'm what you call a casual fan of this series, and it was always nice to see this dysfunctional family on screen. So when Season 4 says it was going to be its final season, I was interested to see how it will play out. And, well, if you type in Umbrella Academy Season 4 on YouTube and scroll to see this, you can imagine what the audience reaction was. Season 4 was not good. At all. And I would list off the many things that was wrong with this season, but for the sake of my mental health and this video, I'm not gonna go into detail. Instead, I'm just gonna give you the clip notes. Facing issues, writers scrambling up ways for characters to do something and complete an arc, redeeming a character who really should not be redeemed, having the cardinal sin of having not one, but two of my worst romantic tropes. Like, seriously, why did you do this, guys? Why did you put them together? Like, seriously, they were fine just hating each other. This is so stupid, it makes me want to jump off a cliff. And the finale itself, which this might be a bit of a hot take, I really didn't mind in concept. I mean, this is based off of a graphic novel that was written by the guy who is part of My Chemical Romance. So having a dreary, bittersweet ending is not really that far-fetched. However, the steps to getting that ending is, yeah. And for a season that's supposed to be revolving around Ben and what happened to him, it really doesn't deliver. I mean, if you're smart enough, you can figure it out what happened to him. And even when they show it in the show itself, it's heavily disappointing. He doesn't even hang out with the rest of the academy for the majority of the time. He mostly hangs out with this chick. Real missed opportunity, guys, for him to bond with the academy despite being part of a different timeline. At least with the rest of the seasons, I can see the fun and chaos from this family. And really, despite its few flaws, I can see where the writers were going with some of the stories. Here though, I don't see nothing. I have no idea what they were trying to do. So yeah, I will definitely not be seeing this season again until my family eventually sees it. And God help them. Okay, time to talk about a good season of a Netflix show as a palate cleanser from that awful entry. The Dragon Prince. I'm sure some of you have never heard of it, and the bare gist that I can explain is that some of the writers from Avatar: The Last Airbender went to Netflix and made a 3D animation television show. It has elves, dragons, its own magic system, and survived the cut from Netflix. It did take a bit of a hiatus after season 3, and season 4 is one of the weaker parts of the story, but after that they continued to improve themselves. And season 6 is probably one of their better seasons, mostly because everything is coming together and getting wrapped up. Ezran delivering one of the hardest lines he can ever deliver.
Are you begging for mercy?
No.
Good. You don't deserve any.
Finally making the main villain a viable threat and turning Viren into one of my favorite characters in this show. Like, initially I didn't think that much of him, but after the self-journey that he goes through seasons 4 and 5, I thought season 5 would conclude his story, but season 6 proved me wrong. I'm not gonna spoil it, but this one line from season 1 comes full circle for him.
Every one of these men and women would gladly trade their life to save yours. Would you, Viren?
Overall, I was pretty satisfied with season 6, and I thought I was going to be done. However, Wonderstorms decided to be sneaky bastards this year and released a teaser trailer for their 7th season. And I was like, oh, okay. But then I rolled down the description and then it read, so by the time season 7 comes out, I'll be on a plane to see my family, and I unfortunately won't be able to record my thoughts on season 7. So future editing me is gonna have to do this section. Take it away, future editing me. This is probably one of the most talked about anime that occurred this year, and that being Dandadan. I initially wanted to cover this manga on my channel, but since it exploded into popularity, I won't do it. But I will talk about the anime since I saw the first 3 episodes before the anime came out in the movie theaters. And yeah, Science Saru is forever my GOAT because they delivered on the animation for this series. They even included the naked scene in the hallway after the fight with the Leviathan. These mad lads actually did it. As for the story, well, the best way I can describe it is two teens discovering aliens and ghosts exist. One of them has to find their balls, quite literally, getting caught up in romantic feelings with one another, and fighting back aliens and ghosts with supernatural powers. I know it sounds bizarre, but the bizarreness is what makes it work. Like seriously, I don't know how the mangaka did this, but he managed to seam all these elements so well. Even the bad romantic parts that I hate so much, he actually treats it with genuineness. Even the characters you initially hated because they pose a threat to the romance, they actually shown to have more depth than that. So yeah, if you haven't seen Dandadan, I would highly recommend it. Okay, just like Smiling Friends Season 2, Blue Eye Samurai, and Arcane Season 2 a couple of entries ago, these next two series are going to be grouped together. Not because they're boring or anything, it's more like you have to see it to experience it. That being Exploding Kitties and One Piece Fan Letter. For Exploding Kitties, I didn't even know this was based off of a card game, and just watched the show out of curiosity, mostly because the main character is voiced by Lucifer. The animation is nothing to write home about. In fact, it kind of looks like one of those off-brand Family Guy clones. But I would say the story was enough to keep me going, and towards the end I am curious to see how they'll handle the whole, well, demon spawn of the earth. On the other hand, One Piece Fan Letter is absolutely fantastic and a true gem to what One Piece is all about. Like seriously, if you're even a fan of One Piece, you should check this special out. It delves into the lives of everyday people in the One Piece world, and it even has perspectives where you don't even think about it, but it is true in the One Piece world. So yeah, that's all I have to say about it. Go watch it. Before I move on to the movie part of this video, I do want to highlight some of the indie shows that I saw. I won't talk about Hell of a Boss or Hazbin Hotel, neither Amazing Digital Circus, because everyone and their mother has talked about it. Plus, I feel like if I even say any remotely of criticism to any Busy Pop show, somebody's gonna hunt me down and sacrifice me to appease their god, so I would rather not get murdered tonight. Instead, I would rather talk about other shows like Ramshackle. I watched the creator's thesis way back when I was in college, and watching the pilot gives me these old 2000s nostalgia feeling, like watching the pilot Long Gone Gulch. It's charming, it has great action, it gives me a vibe that I'm all here for. So if you haven't seen this, check it out when you can. Another is Punch Punch Forever, a show made by the Newgrounds people, and it's basically a love letter to 80s anime. Seriously, if you have any fondness for 80s Japan, check this show out, as I can't really describe it, but it's one of the funniest shows that I've seen besides the TED show. And I'm just going to show you some clips to see what I'm talking about. Irma is cute and charming despite the limited animation and runtime. The Art of Murder is very intriguing to me, mostly because of the different art styles and how well it comes together. Llama with Hats came back with a surprise epilogue video despite the bittersweet and complete story, and really it's just more of what happened after the ending. I'm not going to spoil it here, but check out Llama with Hats if you're curious. And finally, Star Kids Nerdy Prunes Must Die, a musical that's part of the Hatchetfield trilogy. I didn't get a chance to watch Black Friday just yet, but I would say Nerdy Prunes Must Die is on par with the guy who didn't like musicals, except with more better production. And I also didn't know this until after I finished watching the musical that all three musicals take place within different timelines. So when I saw Paul and Emma in a cameo, all I was thinking was, oh my god, they're still alive, they can still save themselves while they still can. So yeah, that's about it for TV shows. I know it could go even longer, especially with the amount of internet pilots and shorts that keeps popping up on YouTube every day, but I'm trying to make sure this video is on a relative time frame as my other videos, so I'm just gonna move on to the next part of my video. That part being... bad boys, what you gonna do? What you gonna do when they come for you? Bad Boys Ride or Die. It's a Bad Boys movie. I don't think I'm wrong when I say that nobody comes to these movies for the story, but rather the chemistry between Martin Lawrence and Will Smith. And in the latest Bad Boy movie, they continue to show that they still got that chemistry. Even though the roles are reversed in this one, where Will is the more cautious one and Martin is the more reckless one. There's even a segment in the movie where one of the secondary characters, who is known for being the butt of the joke, has a chance to shine. And this one scene where it feels like Will Smith is just breaking the fourth wall, humbling himself regarding a certain slap scene, you could say. Overall, I enjoyed myself, and hopefully this will be the last Bad Boys movie, but I'm not wasting my breath. They're probably gonna keep doing this until by the time that they're 70. Inside Out 2 is a surprisingly well done sequel despite repeating some beats from the first movie. Yet I can't help to be very nervous about the future of Pixar, because just before this movie came out, Pete Docter released this article about how they're straying away from original ideas and moving on to sequels. To which, from a financial standpoint, it makes sense, but the reason why we like these franchises in the first place is because of the original ideas. It came from people's experiences. But people have already complained about this, as well as the crunch time between this and Moana 2, so I'm just gonna focus on the movie itself. The movie does a great job at capturing the mindset of a teen, as they focus on from family to now their friends, and even letting some childish things go, but at the same time keep it in their dark secret vault. And I also like how Anxiety, while is portrayed as a villain somewhat, is also pretty understandable from their mindset of how they want to protect Riley, kind of similar to how Joy wanted to protect Riley in the first movie. And really, you should check out Rockatar's video on Inside Out too, because he does a great job at explaining what makes this movie really good. To the surprise of absolutely nobody, Deadpool and Wolverine is the biggest success MCU had in the few recent years, after flop after flop after flop. Mostly because alongside Guardians 3, it doesn't evolve with any of the current events that's happening in the MCU. Really, if you think about it, it's really just a Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman fan fiction, because everyone and their mother has been waiting to see Deadpool and Wolverine on screen. And honestly, I don't mind. Seeing the way these two just bounce off of each other is pure comedy gold, and the action scenes where they're fighting each other is pretty good as well. Like, I'll admit the story is pretty basic, and I don't remember the villain's name off at the top of my head when I'm recording this, but it's not just a Deadpool and Wolverine reunion where we finally see them, but it's also a final send-off to 20th Century Fox, as well as its experimental superhero era. I don't think anyone was expecting a good chunk of cameos. Well, some people, but I feel like if Kevin Feige wasn't just constantly looking over their shoulder when it comes to the writing process, they really had a good story potential with this. But then again, maybe it's just me doing wishful thinking. But overall, I really love Deadpool and Wolverine. Well, DreamWorks, after releasing 2 shit movies this year, I'm glad that this last one isn't so bad. In fact, it's really great. Well, it makes sense considering that the guy who directed it also directed my childhood. So, The Wild Robot. Solely good movie. Despite the well-known director, the story involving a robot taking care of a young goose was executed pretty well. Although I do have a small complaint about the pacing. Even though I do buy into the bond between Roz and Brightbill, I really wish we could have seen more of his childhood to cement the bond even more. But everything else is fantastic. The animation, the music, the celebrity voice actors actually voice acting, and I like how this movie portrays parenthood in a very realistic and funny way. Like, I haven't shown this movie to my sister yet, but when I eventually do, she is going to have that, oh, that is so me for real moments. And I'm happy that this movie got some success and was greenlight for a sequel, so good on you, Chris. Keep up the good work. Alexa, Beetlejuice, Beetlejuice, Beetlejuice.
Sorry, I don't know that.
Yeah, I didn't know a good segue for this. Beetlejuice is one of my favorite all-time movies, and you can kind of see why. The dark, gloomy, and bizarre atmosphere that this movie holds is one of the things that makes Tim Burton, well, Tim Burton. And I watched the movie in preparation for the sequel that came out this year, and even now it still holds up. The special effects, the actors, well, most of them, and the stage presence of the main man himself. As for the sequel, well, I'm not gonna sugarcoat it, it's a bit of a mess. I will admit, I did enjoy myself watching it for the first time. However, I think Alex Meyer said it himself when he says there's too many plot points going on. By the time that it hits its 20-30 minute mark, there's so much stuff going on that by the time that they come around to resolve it, it's done pretty haphazardly. Even Beetlejuice himself, while entertaining in the scenes that he's in, is tame compared to the chaotic nature that he was in the first movie. Really, the focus should have been on Lydia and her restrained relationship with her daughter Astrid, and Astrid coming to terms that ghosts do exist. Bam! You have 2 plot points that you flesh out throughout the entire movie. We don't need these other plot points, so throw them away. Despite all this, if you are a fan of Beetlejuice, I do recommend checking this movie out, at least from a pure entertainment factor alone. The Ghibli Fest came out this year again. I'm glad that it did, because I did miss a few movies that I wanted to see last year but couldn't. And yeah, the same thing happened to me again, although I did manage to see one movie that I was hoping to see, and that being Princess Mononoke. And I would call it one of my favorite all-time Ghibli movies next to Ponyo and Spirited Away. I can see why it's so well regarded, because it's an environmental movie done well. You see both sides struggle for survival, and I like how there's no really real clear answer to this problem, and it's a more gray area. Overall, I really enjoyed this movie, and I hope Ghibli Fest comes back next year so I can enjoy more of their movies. Finally, the last movie that I watched this year was Piece by Piece. I know it's a weird movie to finish this video on, but unless somehow future me managed to watch Memoir of a Snail before I finish editing this video, in which case, future editing me, you know what to do. But as for the movie Piece by Piece, I would say it's a pretty well done documentary. I'm neutral to Pharrell Williams and his music, but I will give him props to this. At least he's doing something different with his documentary by doing Lego. The Lego animation is imaginative and creative, and the movie itself seems to come from a place of genuineness and passion. It was an unexpected surprise that came out this year, but I still enjoyed it regardless. And yeah, that's about everything. I hope you enjoyed this video. This was my first time doing this type of thing, and hopefully this becomes a tradition on my channel. I know I missed some things because I didn't have time or the chance to see/play it, but let me know in the comments below what you enjoyed this year and what your thoughts on some of the stuff I covered. Please leave a like, comment, and subscribe for more of my content. I hope you have a decent day and Happy New Year. Here's to 2025. Oh boy.
Take a deep breath, deep breath, deep breath, deep breath. Let it go, let it out, let it go, let it out.